intro, so I'll introduce myself a little bit more. Esteban will introduce himself. I'll talk a little bit about the broad role of finance. I'll touch on some global trends, and then Esteban will take it from there, going more detail on trends, talking about digital and the team. Okay, next slide, please. So my name is Phil Searle, and as Heather said, I'm the CEO of Chasey Partners. Actually, Chasey Partners was founded about 15 years ago. Prior to that, I was actually back in the late 90s, early 2000s, actually where Esteban and I first worked together. I was the corporate controller for 3Com Corporation through the dot-com boom bust crazy times, the financial scandals, WorldCom, Enron, etc. That was an interesting time to be a controller. But while we were there, that was where we first set up our Latin American shared services organization to extend beyond the global shared services structure we put in, actually not just finance, but multifunctionally. And Esteban run that shared service center, and we had operations in Argentina and some in Brazil supporting Latin America. Anyway, after that, I was the CFO of one of the Sendent business units. I was in the travel business, which is for Sendent, WellSpan, Galileo, cheaptickets.com, orbits.com, that group. And then 15 years ago, I left and established Chasey Partners, and Esteban joined a few years later. So Esteban, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Phil. Hello, everyone. My name is Esteban Carril. I am the Managing Director for Chasey Partners Latin America. I've been working for Chasey for the last 10 years, optimizing and implementing shared service centers across the region, also doing some finance transformation as well. Before joining Chasey, I was the shared services director for two big multinational companies. First, I was the shared services director for EMC, where I implemented shared services. And before that, I implemented shared service centers at 3Com as well. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks very much for joining this session. Over to you, Phil.
Thank you. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so just to touch more on Chasey before we move on. So as I mentioned, founded early 2006 and nearly 15 years ago. We have three main service offerings. We have what I call a sort of traditional shared services. So it's a soup to nuts business case roadmap through optimization, delivery, technology enablement, coaching and support. So design, build, deploy of shared services solutions and optimization. On the right-hand side, you have broader business transformation, which includes things like finance, next generation finance, like we're talking about today, which is look at the entire function, not just the back office, but the entire finance function and how it supports the business. We also do mergers and acquisition support, business continuity planning, etc. And in the middle, we have robotic process automation. We have a robotic process automation practice, which we've had for the last 5 years, which focuses on soup to nuts again, design, build, deploy, proofs of concept, pilots, COE design, vendor selection, training and development for RPA solutions. So RPA, you might have heard of this UiPath and Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism, Softomotive, those sort of tools we are specialized in. We provide support across all the main functions, what we sometimes call the big four of finance, HR, IT, and procurement. And as you probably heard, we're very much practitioners first. Both myself and Esteban and many of the team are from practitioner backgrounds, i.e. we were on the delivery side before becoming consultants. Okay. Next slide, please. This is just a splash on the page of some of our clients. You can see on the sort of left-hand side is our higher education public sector. In the middle is our multinational private sector, generally speaking, companies. And on the right is our Latin American experience. And if you go to the next slide, we'll show the Latin American companies a little bit more clearly. So these are some of our Latin American clients over the last 10 to 15 years. We're currently working, for example, with Alicorp, Grupo ISA, Hutchison Ports and Manpower, and also Dos Pinos. So those are some of the ones we're working with right now, but these are some of the clients we've worked with over the years on functional and multifunctional projects. Okay. All right, so let's talk about the role of finance. One of the things we always try and do is, well, what is the role of finance? What is the goal of finance? What is it trying to achieve? And if you go to the next slide for me, Esteban, please. So this is this is from a slide I borrowed from the Institute of Chartered Accountants back in the early 2000s, if I recall correctly. And we sort of adapted it. It's called this sort of broad integrated role of finance, and you've got sort of number of responsibilities. I've talked about accounting and control. So you see at the bottom, you see compliance and control, which is really that traditional debit and credit bookkeeping role of finance. And on the bottom left, you have the processes that are used to both support that and also support the business, which are called back office services, which link to processes on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, let's go to the top. On the top, you have the more business partnering. So that's where finance provides this decision support to the business. And we'll be drilling down on that one specifically in a second. And on the right-hand side, you have the strategic, more enterprise-wide components of finance. So you've got these various responsibilities. They interact, and to some degree, conflict is the wrong word. They don't conflict with each other, but there are some, for example, compliance and control and business partnering. They should leverage each other, but they are not the same. Information provided by the back office should support the front office of finance, for example. But there are a number of different responsibilities for finance, and it's very important to understand the roles attached to each so that you can allocate the right level of resources, the right skill sets, the right technology, and you don't mix and match them too much such that they overlap or conflict with each other, to use that word. So we like this, and we sort of view finance through this lens, and it sometimes helps determine the broad role of finance. So we'll come back to this a little bit later in different elements. So next slide, please. So I mentioned this decision support business partnering. Sometimes when we talk about finance, is you have certain services or processes that are called what I call compliance related that you have to do. You have to process invoices, you have to file returns, you have to pay your vendors, you have to collect cash, because if you don't do all of that, you have to pay your taxes. If you don't do that, you go out of business pretty quick. You have to meet laws. It's very compliance and control related. Then you have other components like I've talked about at the top of that chart, which is more about business partnering / decision support. There's no rule or set of governance or tax regulation that says you have to have a finance decision support role. So if you're going to invest in finance decision support, it has to add some value. So what is decision support? So in the middle, I've just talked about this. So the dictionary defines the decision as a conclusion or resolution reached after consideration or the action or process of deciding. And support is give assistance, encouragement, or approval, or confirm or back up. So decision support is therefore providing assistance to help consider and then confirm a particular conclusion or resolution. So in other words, finance is there to support the company's commercial and strategic activities and help influence those decisions. What finance shouldn't do is be just a rubber stamper, which is basically where the business makes a decision and finance just goes okay, because it has to show value. What is the value add from providing often more expensive finance resources to support decision making? If there is no value add, why are you spending money on it? Why are you hiring expensive finance professionals if they're not adding any value? Because again, there's no law requires them to do that. Just quickly on the left-hand side, sometimes you hear FP&R and FP&A, financial planning, reporting, financial planning and analysis. So generally speaking, I would say financial planning reporting tends to be more open to centralization and control and sort of enterprise-wide rules and regulations and processes. FP&A tends to link more to decision support, which is basically the analysis part, which is making decisions based on data and information, sensitivity analysis, profitability analysis, product roadmaps, that sort of thing. So when you think about specifically the top left of that diagram, decision support, business partnering, tend to use this to help people determine the role, the nature of that role, the sort of people you need in that role, the sort of skill sets and support you need in those roles. So just wanted to touch on that. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so this is going to be my last slide before I hand over to Esteban. So what's been going on? Well, as we all know, a lot's been going on in the last year, especially, but prior to that, leading up to that as well. There's a few on the page here, so I'll talk briefly about these. So the finance operating model is having to adapt quickly to its expanded scope and responsibility that I've just talked about. And also I've mentioned it needs to become more integrated and closer to the business. So if historically back in the day, you'd almost hear back office being almost a sort of dismissive way of describing finance, out of sight, out of mind, stay out of the way of the business, offshore, outsource it if you can, keep out of the way. Well, that's definitely not the case anymore. It's much more integrated with the business due to the need to support decision making, due to the complex environment, due to the availability of data, for example, that can be provided by finance in the back office, and this whole one office concept that we'll come back to. So finance is much more integrated and closer to the business than it used to be. Innovation and productivity, and I've mentioned data, the importance of data, the capture of data, the trust in that data and the use of that data. Then we've got this huge technology trend, which we sometimes call, along with others, the fourth industrial revolution. And Esteban will talk about that. So you've got traditional ERP, but then you've got robotic process automation, intelligent automation, artificial intelligence, and of course, social media and mobile solutions. Everything has to be on one of these days. And so you need to be able to enable that as a finance department. Then we've got what I would call seen as the reversal of the previous trend of business process outsourcing for finance. There was this trend to move a bunch of these sort of more transactional activities to offshore outsourcers. That trend is reversed for a couple of reasons. One, because of the desire to have it closer to the business, and two, because of the opportunity through robotic arbitrage to actually eliminate those activities through to automation rather than offshoring them to a lower cost location or through an outsourcer. The other thing I would say about BPO around finance and HR is that it's more difficult than outsourcing, say, manufacturing and IT, where you can literally give a request for a blueprint. It can be done offshore or outsourced and then be brought back in when it's done. Finance processes and HR processes tend to be more intertwined, and therefore there has been a bit of a trend to bring that back onshore as well. It doesn't mean outsourcing doesn't still have a role in certain things like, for example, technology enablement or even RPA or specialist analytics, but the back office BPO has come back more onshore. There's an accelerated development of the COE, or the Center of Excellence, Center of Expertise, around value-added services. So that's what we call going up the value chain into more, for example, credit and FP&R, like I mentioned earlier, financial planning, reporting. And some of these more analytical roles through the center have come into centers of excellence, centers of expertise. And then, of course, that's part of a broader trend around multifunctional and single functional global business services that many of you have probably heard about. And then there's a growing recognition, acceptance, and leveraging of what we call the hybrid workforce. So that is a hybrid of humans and technology, including specifically on the desktop, where you can have an individual like myself working alongside a bot or bots that run on my desktop, and they can work together. And then you have those same other bots or different bots working on a server overnight. So you have a mixture of what we call robotic desktop automation on the desktop, robotic process automation on the server, and mixing and matching and handing work between human activity, called the hybrid workforce, which is a real trend. And then finally, of course, we've had the COVID-19 pandemic and this very significant move to remote working, significant reduction in travel. Esteban and I were just talking about that. The last time I took a business trip was in March. And yet prior to that, I was probably traveling half my time. And then, of course, it's the potential. Well, there was a global recession. There's been a sort of a V-shaped recovery in a lot of countries, but is that going back down again? All of this is happening, and of course, placing huge impact on organizations and requirements on the finance organization. So overall, there's remote work, global impacts, going digital, need to be proactive at the partnership, and data-driven, in summary. So with that, I will hand to Esteban, who will ask the first question and take it from here and drill down a little bit more on these trends that I've just talked about. So over to you, Esteban.
Thanks a lot, Phil. So yeah, let's go to our first online question. So taking into account we are almost at the end of 2020, definitely a year that it will be remembered due to the global pandemic. Many of you should be probably working on your plans for 2021. So we would like to ask you, what would be your key priority in 2001 as a consequence of this pandemic, or in the journey towards the next generation finance function? So we would like you to, I'm going to start the poll right now. We would like you to identify what will be your priorities for 2021. All right, I think that I will let 1 minute to go. All right, excellent. So yeah, not so surprisingly, one of the key trends that you were talking about, Phil, RPA is definitely one of the key initiatives for most of the shared services and GBS organizations, especially in Latin America. So it's not a surprise that many of the organizations are going to that model, right? So 40% of you responded RPA as one of the key initiatives for 2021. Phil, any additional comments that you would like to make on that?
No, that's very interesting, and it's also really interesting how, honestly, I mean, this is just a straight flash of the results. Implement, expand remote working. Everybody's working remote anyway, so you can't really implement or expand on that. I suppose the other one would be linking to the comment about recession. It's interesting to see such a proportionate talk about enterprise-wide cost reduction efforts. So that's interesting as well.
All right. So companies are beginning to understand the massive impact of the fourth revolution and the role of technology in transforming business models and processes. This new revolution started back at the beginning of this century and is characterized by the marriage of physical assets and advanced technologies. A much more widespread of mobile and cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and machine learning tools that will enable us to be more flexible and responsive to make more data-driven decisions. So just to reinforce how changes will be historical in terms of speed and size, I would like to bring some interesting points from a report that I just read from the World Economic Forum, where identified 21 technology tipping points. This means moments when a technology change will hit dramatically our business as usual, and they are all expected to happen in the next 10 years. So if we take a look at this, I will not mention all the 21 points, but just to take a look at some of the tipping points that definitely applies to the business organizations. So the first, government will replace population census by big data resources. Just to have an idea, in 2013, it is expected that 90% of the population will have regular internet access. If we think about it, it took us 140 years for 90% of the population have electricity. So these are the changes that are coming. I mean, at high speed, really, really rapid changes. Internet and mobile penetration in Latin America, talking about Latin America, internet and mobile penetration in Brazil and Mexico are high at approximately 70% of population today. That is even higher than China and India today. 30% of the corporate audits will be conducted by artificial intelligence. There will be a first government collecting taxes through blockchain. The first artificial intelligence machine will be participating in a corporate board of directors. So those are dramatic changes in the way we will be doing business. And if we look at Latin America, it is clear that its future will be digital. Latin America is a massive market. In terms of population, it is right now twice of the US. And in terms of economic potential, its GDP is half of China's. Despite this low internet speed, the expensive mobile data, internet usage and mobile adoption are growing at incredible fast rates right now. And e-commerce has now catapulted as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic. As a matter of fact, COVID-19 was our unexpected catalyst for technology adoption, as we are now starting to look technology for everyday services. If we think about it right now, e-commerce in Latin America has grown more in the last 8 months than it grew in the last 6 years. E-commerce companies are beginning to be the most valuable companies in the last in our region, such as Mercado Libre, Magalu in Brazil, just as they did globally in the last decade with companies like Alibaba, Amazon, etc., etc. So really, we're clearly on the right path in terms of digital transformation in Latin America. And there's clearly an inflection point, and all trends point to a digital future for Latin America and the business in Latin America. So if we move to the next slide, and this is going to be a little bit about history of what happened in the last, in the last 3 revolutions. The first revolution introduced the mechanical production, as we all know, activated by the construction of the railways and the steam machine. The second revolution made mass production through electricity and the assembly line. The third industrial revolution began in the 60s. It is usually called the digital revolution, mainly due to the characterized by the semiconductors, the mainframes, the personal computers, and back in the 90s, the internet. So digital technologies that had computers, software, networking at their core is not really new. But in a break with the third revolution, what is making this fourth revolution so important is the fusion of these technologies and their interaction between the physical and the digital domains. So from a business perspective, we see the fourth revolution will have mainly 2 main effects. The first one is that the customer expectations are changing. Customers in the digital era will be in the digital era will be at the heart of the economy, and their expectations are now being translated into experiences. So there is more transparency right now through online price comparisons. We can go into the internet today and we can compare products and services very easily. So offering an enhanced customer experience is definitely key to differentiate our value proposal. We are also beginning to understand to change from a concept of ownership to a concept of sharing. We can see companies like Uber, Spotify, Airbnb. There's a lot about the concept of consumers no longer purchasing products, but rather having moving into a service era where they will acquire services through a digital platform. The growing need to be more customer-centric is making the supporting functions like IT, finance, HR, procurement redefine their strategies to support internal customers in improving customer experience. And improved products with data are moving many industries from focusing on selling products, as I said before, to service delivery. That is absolutely important. So there is another significant change in the way this new digital area will impact us. That is that the existing operating models are transforming into new digital models. All these different impacts require companies to reconsider their existing operating models. So to evolve from a world class to a digital world class, the whole finance operation will need to accelerate the development and adoption of new technology and digital business capabilities. It is no more the time where it was enough to have an accounting degree, an ERP, and have a training on ERP platform. We are now need to develop analytics capabilities. We have to drive business information, including enhanced business analytics, to support the business in achieving its goals. This also includes taking a more forward-looking approach, predicting the future, rather than the traditional approach of analyzing the past. The successful finance organizations will move from silos structures into a more connected model with other areas like sales, IT, procurement, etc. So it's really changing the operating model the way it is conceived right now for finance. So if we look at the concept of one office, and this is something that Phil was mentioning before. So Phil mentioned the concept of one office, and we took this slide from our colleague Phil First from Horses from Sources. We strongly recommend you to access his site and read this article. And we are bringing it here because we believe it's really relevant on what's happening in the digital transformation that we're experiencing right now. So in this article, it says that we're evolving into an era where there is only one office that matters, creating the digital experience and a smart and unique office to enable and support it. This is obviously a very strong statement from this article. We will still have the functions. We will still have those 4 channels or finance roles that Phil was describing before in the first slide. But in order to evolve to best-in-class finance organization, we must adapt to think more like one office. This means that these 4 finance roles, corporate finance, business partners, shared services, and centers of excellence, need to become more integrated and understand how they connect with each other to achieve the ultimate goal of the entire organization, that is to enhance the customer experience. So it's all about enhancing and improving the customer experience. That is really what one office is all about. And this concept of one office applies to all the supporting functions. We need IT, finance, HR, supply chains, like an enterprise circular system aligned to support the customer experience. Rather than operating in some kind of vacuum, we're using this term of smart digital support, where broader roles are created and employees' performance are aligned to the achievement of common business goals. So the approach should change towards creating a work culture where people are encouraged to spend more time on understanding data, understanding the needs of the front end to the business, and ensuring the supporting functions keep pace with the front office. Of course, we all need to make sure that we can keep our operations running. Our transactional work needs to keep up and running. But in order to become a world-class finance organization, we necessarily need to move and create a work culture that appeals the next generation to talent to take the new organization, to have the new organization, to the new generation feel motivated about the changes. So next generation finance employees, millennials, wants to feel part of something that their work matters. And the best way to do this is to move away from those rigid corporate structures, too many layers, department runs like mini empires. We need to invest in managers who understand how to motivate and collaborate across all functions. Sales, marketing, customer IT, human resources, and the supply chains are functions that depend on each other to be effective. So smart companies are already moving and breaking those silos to help their staff to feel more motivated. They are creating and challenging the old way of doing things, and definitely one office is a real alignment of operations with the purpose of the organization, the main purpose of the organization, which is assuring that there is a customer experience. I heard a lot of companies, a lot of shared services companies, that they realize that they do not only need to track their traditional KPIs regarding service, regarding quality, but they realize that what it matters to the internal customer is to measure their key metrics. So there are several GBS companies that they are not only measuring the traditional KPIs that we all know from shared services, but they start measuring how their service impacts on the KPIs of their internal customers. So that is very important. So that is about one office.
Actually, Esteban, just a couple of additional comments to just build on what you said. So if you just go back the slide, so what this one office, as Esteban said, it's more about understanding what the goal of the organization is and less about being a silo. So Esteban mentioned that It's about outcome driven. It's about supporting the outcomes. Why are you there? What's your role? It's about eliminating handoffs to much as possible to be end-to-end process. It's about integration. It's about use of data and sharing. It's about supporting the KPIs. Everything Esteban said. The only one thing I would add to that is it doesn't mean that everyone needs to be a jack of all trades. So that generalist model where somebody in finance needs to support the business partner, but needs to be doing accounts payable, that needs to be doing, tax filing. No, that doesn't mean that. It means that the finance function needs to support all of that and needs to rotate through those roles to be proficient, but you still need specialist roles even in this integrated structure. So that's where your employee development, staff development for finance comes in. So you want to make sure you rotate your finance team through these roles as appropriate so they get the appropriate skill set. So you still need that. So it's not about everyone being a jack of all trades, but it is about integration, end-to-end process, sharing of data information, and supporting the outcomes. That's what that's all about.
Thanks, Phil. So going digital. All right, so this slide is not ours. We brought it from McKinsey. And we believe it's relevant based on what we were talking about, reshaping the future finance function. There are 4 areas of technology at the moment that we believe show the greatest promise for use in finance. On the left-hand side, we obviously have automation and robotics to improve financial processes whose main goal is to improve productivity and quality performance. 40% of finance activities, including cash disbursements, AP, revenue management, general ledger, can be fully automated. And another 17% can be mostly automated. These figures demonstrate that to the extent to which finance can simplify basic internal transactions through automation, establish a standardized reporting mechanism, and work more efficiently. More companies successfully implemented RPA at scale by altering their operating models and redesigning their processes. We're talking about democratizing RPA, where finance employees are receiving RPA technology trainings, so they no longer need to send workflow requests to IT that already has a lot of work to do. When we look at finance, GBS and shared services organizations in Latin America specifically, there has been an increase of RPA implementation from 31% in 2019 to 53% in 2020. Those are 22%, 22 points of increase compared year-over-year basis. And there is also a larger proportion of shared services, 26%, who are keen on understanding their ERP journey next year. We're estimating, and this is an internal benchmark we did at Chasey, we're estimating that 30% of Latin American shared service centers will be targeting productivity improvements or more than 10% next year, mainly driven by process automation. And this is absolutely consistent with the pool that we just did, right? I mean, where we see a lot of companies, a lot of attendees trying to explore and trying to expand their RPA strategies. Then we have data visualization, which gives end users access to the real-time financial information by providing an accessible way to see and understand trends, outliers, patterns in data. In the world of big data, data visualization tools are key to analyze massive amounts of information by leveraging internal and external data to produce online reports and analysis. One thing that is usually a problem when it comes to data visualization is that finance needs real-time information to make data-driven decisions, and they often lack access to this data because data is stored in different parts of the company, the data formats are not comparable, the data is not available at all. So to enable this, we at Chasey, we have been working with several companies in the last few months on designing their new data governance model, including defining data standards, data architecture, technology enablers to manage master data. We also found that many clients are matching automation capabilities with data visualization technologies to create timely and actionable reports to the business. So these reports can quickly push data to end users and present real-time data in graphical representations that encourage focused discussions, focused business discussions. So the third technology that is definitely going to be a key technology for finance in the future are related to advanced analytics. And advanced analytics is the autonomous or self-autonomous examination of data using sophisticated tools to discover deeper insights, predictions, and generate recommendations. So you see that it's a step forward of data visualization. Data visualization usually works with past data, and advanced analytics, it's a system that allows you, it's a technology that allows you to predict data in the future. So while traditional BI tools use historical data, tools of advanced analytics focus on forecasting future events, behaviors enabling finance to make and predict actions and events before they actually happen. So that's pretty much about advanced analytics. And there are a lot of tools right now in the market where there are some companies that start investing in these type of tools. And this is exactly aligned to what Phil was talking about the decision support role of finance. It's also aligned to the comment that I was mentioning before about it's not just about finance looking at the past data, but also looking at how to predict the future. This is going to be definitely the new role of finance in the future. So, and finally, once companies define the new technologies and advanced technologies for the finance functions, they can work. Sorry, I think I moved. They can work. They can start looking for valuable data for the business. So this advanced analytics can also be applied to the business overall. So they can predict models. They can support decision-making processes for the business, including sales, including marketing, etc., etc. So let's go to the next questions. And definitely, when we're talking about the four technologies, the finance function will definitely need to be in these four new technology enablers for the future. Automation and RPA and data visualization definitely is a must right now. And in order to become a business partner and support the decisions of the future, definitely advanced analytics for finance and advanced analytics for business is definitely a technology that you would like to consider for the future. So let's go to the next question. And we would like to ask you how your organization implemented or has your organization implemented intelligent automation such as process automation to enable your finance transformation journey. So
while we're waiting for that, Esteban, we just time check. We have 15 minutes left. We just, okay. I'm going to try and take some questions at the end as well, if we can.
All right, so it looks like most of the companies, most of the attendees, they are right now expanding their RPA workforce. 38% responded that they are expanding, which is also consistent with our trends that we believe that 2021 is definitely a year where most of the technologies will be, more of the companies will be expanding their RPA initiatives. So we see here the results. Definitely, most of the companies are currently expanding their RPA workforce. All right, so moving to the next slide, building your team. So what is really what is moving finance as a function to finance as a service really means? It is really moving from the transactional approach to a value generation profile to the business, which requires developing an organizational capable of being customer-centric, agile in terms of support and business processes. Right now, as part of the pandemic, we have seen a huge correlation of some finance organizations that they have strong operating models and how they reacted to the global pandemic. And that was a very interesting benchmark to see, since these are one of those rare cases where we see companies reacting to the same event at the same time. And we can see that most of the companies that they have a strong operating model, they came out more strong from this pandemic. And there were some other companies that were not, or they are at the beginning of setting up their operating models. They presented challenges to survive the contingency. So we're really talking about building a strong operating model. So this is just an example of traditional finance world-class operating model. We have 4 channels, or how we call it, yeah, definitely it's 4 channels. We have corporate finance, business partners, financial planning. We have the community of center of expertise, which could be financial planning and reporting, or any other professional or technical capability that we would like to develop as part of a center of excellence. And we have shared services. So as you can see at the bottom, any of these functions will need to be developed through what we call a customer interaction framework. That is developing the way these 4 channels will be interacting with the internal customer in the future. And this goes back again to the customer experience, what we're talking about. This is definitely a model where we see the business partners influencing the decision-making process, empowered by tools that can allow them to predict information. We see the corporate finance function defining the long-term strategy for finance, defining policies and procedures, working on tax planning, defining the treasury and corporate finance programs. And then we have the Center of Excellence. The Center of Excellence are basically some specific capabilities. There are strategic capabilities for finance that we would like to develop because they are core for the business. So in this case, we are talking about RPA, for example, a Center of Excellence. We are talking about, as Phil mentioned before, an FP&R Center of Excellence that can allow you to develop new reporting capabilities, standardizing reports, analyzing data, etc., etc. And then we have the shared services. So this model, and this is the most important part, is that they need to be interconnected. They need to be working on a process design, on an end-to-end process design, to make sure that there are interconnections between the different departments. That's absolutely key to make sure that you have a consistent, a sustainable, and resilient model for the future. So talking about building and assessing your workforce for the next generation finance, one of the biggest challenges today we see for the finance functions is generally around skills. The lack of digital skills holds back finance ability to innovate and the company's ability to transform. And if we look at Latin America, there is definitely a lack and a shortage of talent resources, especially regarding careers like sciences, technology, engineering, mathematics. So there is definitely, this is an area that definitely needs to be worked on Latin America. So it's not just about what skills are needed, but whose responsibility is to create those paths and develop those learning opportunities to ensure the right skills, mindset, and behaviors. As I said before, it's no longer the times when it was enough to obtain an accountant degree and complete training sessions in Excel and ERP at work. Technology skills are becoming very important, and automation has already eliminated many of the manual tasks. So, and here's the challenge. In the past, when we were just graduated from as accountants and wanted to get our first job in finance, one of the things that we did was usually to look for those transactional manual work to get the experience. But guess what? Right now, based on the automation, most of those jobs are disappearing. So it's really how we can train the finance organization in today's environment when there is no more transactional work, or there will be no more transactional work to start, to have to develop the people, to the finance team, and we will have to reinvent and redefine our training capabilities in the companies to make sure that we have the people with the right skills that we need to be able to move into the next generation finance. And this also takes into account that finance right now does not necessarily need to look for just accounting on finance degrees. We will need to look at definitely some other skills like mathematics, engineering, data analytics. So those are the skills that may not be found in the traditional finance careers and are definitely key for the future, for the finance future function. So common aspects, or what are the key issues when it comes to barriers for the finance transformation? Definitely lack of leadership sponsorship. In large organizations, different departments are often not designed or encouraged to work together. So when that happens, the only way to fix that is with the support of the top level management. In most of organizations, unless senior management is behind a clear vision and a clear definition, no one will feel strong enough to move forward. So definitely lack of leadership is one of the traditional barriers. Outdated legacy systems, it's another classic. When an organization continues to use outdated legacy systems, it can lead to lowered security, decreased compliance, poor use of resources and time, and missed opportunities for improvement. So definitely outdated legacy system is something that needs to be addressed for the digital transformation. Many manual and messy processes, lack of end-to-end vision, process vision is definitely a barrier that needs to be addressed during a finance transformation project. Definitely designing the processes, and as I said before, making sure that we break.
Yeah, Esteban, we just got a couple of minutes left, so if we have one more poll question, I think, and then we'll maybe take any questions. But yeah.
Okay. All right. So, question 4: what are the most challenging barriers to stop your organization moving forward to the next generation finance? We would like to know. You are currently in a, in your finance transformation journey. We would like to know what are those barriers right now to move forward to your transformation journey. All right, so So absence of investment appetite for emerging technologies seems to be number one. It's interesting that the second one, too busy managing response to global pandemic. Actually, this could be, sometimes it could be a barrier, but it could also be a burning platform to move on the finance transformation project. This could be a lever to move forward a finance transformation project. I don't know, Phil, if you would like to comment on that one.
No, I would agree. I mean, it's almost like a chicken and egg. You need to sort of you need to use the burning platform to help you invest. But I would just highly recommend that people consider how to build intelligent automation RPA into their go forward strategy, because every single project we're involved with now anywhere involves it to some degree, even if it's just highlighting it as an opportunity for the future. It's involved everywhere. There is a question here, Esteban. I don't know if you can see it, from Juliet, asking about predictive KPIs. Can you see that on the chat box? I don't know if you can just respond to that one.
Sure. So could you recommend some literatures or examples about predictive key metrics and traditional lag measures KPIs?
Yeah.
So yeah, so in terms of predictive key metrics, we have some. We know there are some companies that they're starting adopting business KPIs rather than using the traditional KPIs for shared services. We have some literature at Chasey Partners regarding KPIs, so I recommend you to take a look at the literature that we have. We can probably send you some material, so you can probably take a look at what are those metrics, key metrics for measuring a finance transformation project. Phil, I don't know if you would like to comment something about that.
Yeah, given the time, if you'd like to just drop us a note, we can send you some examples afterwards and documentation that Esteban's referring to, or even have a conversation, because the question is absolutely right. As you're moving from a sort of lag indicator to a forward-looking indicator, that the shared service centers need to adapt their dashboards and KPIs to do that. We're working with another company on that at the moment. But if you can drop Sarah or a line or something, we can connect with you on that.
Excellent. So moving on, we have the key critical success factors for a sustainable transformation project. This not only involves standardizing processes, standardizing technology, moving into the technology enablers for digital transformation, aligning the organization, but also, and most importantly, to make sure that you have a consistent approach to treat your internal customers. So that's definitely key for any finance transformation project.
There's a question coming now. I think we'll have to take this last question, and then we'll have to hand back to Heather. But the question is, it's a great question, and you've just pulled up the slide, right? Well, the question is, what do you think is the first step to start with finance transformation? And you pulled this right up. So the first thing is to make a proper assessment of where you are. And we always recommend doing a roadmap and business case for transformation, which is, which, as it says here, is trying to understand your current state and the opportunity. We would normally have you do a baseline, and that would involve some activity analysis, some understanding of your current technology footprint, views of stakeholders, some benchmarking. That all can go into an opportunity matrix that you can present options from. Again, if you'd like to follow up afterwards, we're very happy to do that. So it's really about determining what the driver is for finance transformation. You should probably already know that, but it's about putting that together into a proper roadmap and assessment, and then presenting that to key stakeholders. That's what we're talking about there. So happy to take that one offline as well. We have run out of time. So I'd like you all very much, thank you all very much for your attendance today. Please feel free to connect. Sarah will also send out copies of the slides as well, and it will be available online. So with that, we're out of time. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Esteban, and handing back to Heather.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Esteban. That was fantastic. As I mentioned before, this was recorded as well. It was recorded in Spanish, so that will be available after the event. If you do have any questions that you want to ask the team, you can find them right here. They've given you their emails. You can find them on LinkedIn. They are very receptive, and you can always also send me an email, and I can forward it along, and I'm happy to send that along. Please remember, this is only the first of 4 fantastic sessions for today. today. Our next 3 sessions are going to be on a different Zoom link. I posted that in the chat box. So right after I say goodbye, please head over to that new Zoom link. The session will start at 12:15. So it'll give you a few minutes to grab another coffee or do whatever you have to do before we start our next session. But those are the details in the chat box. So please make sure that you join us over there. So once again, Phil, Esteban, thank you so much for your fantastic workshop today. And I will see all of you over at our next session, which, as I said, is in 15 minutes, how CEMEX streamlined global supplier management from multiple ERPs and manual processes to a single automated portal. All right, everybody, thanks so much for your time. I'll see you in a few minutes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.